Conversation with State Representative Jim Struzzi, brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Representative Struzzi on the line with us this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Todd.
It's good to have you with us here today. Yesterday, you posted an interesting video. Ran over 8 minutes as you talked about the state, its response to COVID-19. If you were to thumbnail that for me and just sum it up, what would you say?
Well, sure. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, Todd. That video was on the Get Indiana County Back to Work page on Facebook. It's a group of people that, I think we did our part for COVID-19, and now people want to get back to work, want to put food on their tables, and I totally get that. So I've been trying to do a live video for them once a week now. That was the third one, kind of summarizing what we did in Harrisburg this week and some of the things that are happening related to the COVID-19 crisis and getting Pennsylvania and Indiana County reopened. So I summarized some of the bills that we passed this week and some of the frustration that we continue to have with the governor's unwillingness to really listen to the voice of the people, which as representatives, that's what we are. And so our only method to reach the governor is to pass legislation, as you know. So this week we moved a number of bills, House Bill 2440, which is a bill that would allow sportsmen's clubs, gun clubs, things like that to reopen, which I am a co-sponsor on. We also passed a couple of bills related to outdoor dining, outdoor recreation, things like that. A couple of key bills that we passed, though, Todd, that are big picture bills, and I think would have some long-term bearing is House Resolution 867, which was put together by Majority Leader Brian Cutler, and that will form a committee that is going to take a look at the entire COVID-19 response. Mm-hmm. What we did right, what we did wrong, and what we can fix so that some of the mistakes that were made, and there were clearly some mistakes made in the response, but it doesn't happen again. That was a key one. And then we also passed another bill, which is the Senior Protection Act, to make sure that there are more protections in place in nursing homes. As you know, a lot of the unfortunate deaths that occurred due to COVID-19 occurred in nursing homes. So that bill will also address some of those issues.
A lot of frustration among the state lawmakers having to do with the veto by Governor Wolf of several bills this week. That is really getting under the skin of some people. Probably got under your skin a little bit, too, when the House wasn't able to override one of them just yesterday.
Yeah, House Bill 2388 that we passed last week, the Senate had already passed. We passed it, Senate passed it. It came back to us on concurrence with some amendments that would have allowed other types of businesses to reopen, like garden centers, hair salons, some manufacturing, auto dealerships, real estate, those types of things. The governor vetoed that, and so it came back to the House, and this is the first time in my experience that we've tried to override a veto. So it was kind of exciting for me. This was Wednesday evening. We were there pretty late. But to do that, we need 2/3 of the vote, which means we need some of our colleagues from the other side of the aisle to join with us to vote. And unfortunately, we didn't get that. We had a handful, about 10 maybe, that voted with us, but it wasn't enough to overturn the veto. And so that failed, which was somewhat frustrating. But I think, even our colleagues from the other side of the aisle, I think, are getting frustrated. We did our part. We did the quarantine. We stayed home. And now it's time to go green. And I think most people around the state are feeling that way. I hear it discussed in the aisles, in the hallways in Harrisburg, and we really need to push for that now.
Was there ever a feeling during the veto vote or since that time that the momentum is really switching?
Well, it is, and I think the governor's realizing that. We're all in difficult situations. I don't envy the governor in his position. He's had to deal with this just like all of us. A historical event in our lifetimes that no one's really had to deal with before. But I think he's starting to realize that it is time to get Pennsylvania reopened, to get people back to work. We are going to move a resolution to end the disaster declaration. It moved out of committee yesterday, and I believe we'll be voting on that on the House floor next week. And by ending the disaster declaration, it does take away some of the powers that the governor has been exercising to shut down businesses and to do all the things that he's been doing, which he does have a constitutional right to do when there's a disaster declaration. So by passing this resolution, which is House Resolution 836, that will end the disaster declaration, and that will put more power back into the hands of the legislature and the people.
Does that need approval from the Senate and then a signing by the governor as well?
I believe it does, Todd, but it is a step in the right direction.
Okay. Other legislation you think might be introduced soon or that you will be introducing soon?
Well, yeah, a key thing that's been happening kind of behind the scenes, and I think it's something that people really need to be aware of, is that the governor continues through the Department of Environmental Protection to move the regional greenhouse gas initiative forward. That was supposed to be a public process with, participation, public meetings and things like that, but they have sort of quietly continued to move those regulations forward. So I participated myself in the DEP's Air Quality Committee hearing on RGGI, and then there was another hearing this week on RGGI. And the good news is that both of those committees voted to not move RGGI forward. And I think that sends a pretty big statement to the governor. But unfortunately, again, the governor not listening to the voice of the people, he's continuing to move RGGI forward, and the DEP continues to move it forward. So in June, we're going to introduce House Bill 2550, or 2050, 2025, I'm sorry, Todd. A lot of bill numbers.
Sure.
But that's my bill, along with the bill that Senator Pittman has in the Senate, to basically require that any type of multi-state pact, like a regional greenhouse gas initiative, be voted through the legislature first, because we represent all aspects of the state. And if something as big as RGGI is going to have as big an impact as it will on areas of Pennsylvania, all areas of Pennsylvania, all consumers of energy, we feel that the legislatures have a say in that. And so we're going to move that bill in June, I believe, simply because the governor is not backing off on RGGI, even though 2 DEP advisory committees voted to not move it forward.
Yeah, the fact that they are DEP advisory committees that are recommending against it should say something, but evidently that message is not getting through. You have another piece of legislation you're going to be introducing?
Nothing right now. There's
Okay.
a few things in committee, and we're working behind the scenes on some other things. Of course, I was really excited this week that Cody's Law passed through the House. I think that's really big for a lot of people in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. So I was thrilled to see that move forward. And I'm hoping that makes it all the way to the finish line.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of questions. A rally planned for next week at the Indiana County Courthouse, and according to a couple of reports, you and Senator Pittman planning to speak at that rally. Is that actually going to happen?
Yes, I believe that's Thursday morning. I'm planning to be there. We are scheduled to be in Harrisburg next week, but I should be back Thursday morning. And so, yeah, I plan to be there, Todd. I think, as I continue to say, people want to be heard, and right now it feels like they're not being heard. We still have people contacting our office that haven't seen a penny of unemployment compensation, and we're 2 months into this now, and I don't know how these people are surviving, and people are just very frustrated. I mean, there's not a day that goes by that we don't get emails and calls to our office saying, help us end this. And so these business owners, they want to be heard, and so I'm going to support them. I will be there on Thursday. And we're going to do that. That's
10 a.m. at the courthouse, and particularly hair salons, those sorts of things, gyms, other business owners that have been forbidden to reopen are organizing that, and you and Senator Pittman going to be there. Somebody else wanted me to ask you, Representative Struzzi, about schools and what you are hearing in terms of their ability to plan for the opening of school again in the fall. I guess it would apply to IUP as well, although they've already announced what they plan to do, everything dependent upon the current situation when we get there. But public schools, that's the question that people are wondering about now. Will there be state guidance on public schools and procedures for reopening with students in the building come fall?
Yeah, I believe they are actually working on that guidance right now, Todd. I've seen a couple of things here and there, but I think they will have some pretty good guidance for public schools. I think it's important that we do get the kids back to school. I was really happy to see that IUP is going to have students back in the classroom this fall for many reasons. We really depend on IUP and the student population being here in Indiana for our economy. So to learn that they're going to do the best they can to get students back in the classroom, I think is very positive. And I think you'll see the same thing happening with K through 12 education. I know homeschooling for many parents has been a challenge, myself included, with our 4 kids. And I'd like to see the kids back in the classroom tomorrow if we could. But I do think they're going to have some really good guidelines. I think it's possible to to get the kids back in the classroom safely, and I'd like to see that happen.
Another thing that folks are wondering about, Oh, gosh, I lost that train of thought because I just saw something else that just popped up onto my screen. But this is something that's flying a little bit under the radar. We're only a couple of weeks out from primary election. In fact, not even 2 weeks.
Right.
And there are concerns about mail-in ballots. I've not heard them voiced so much in Pennsylvania, though, although that is something that the state is encouraging.
Yeah, there's some rumblings in other parts of the state. People have concerns with the mail-in ballots and, the validity of mail-in ballots. I did check with our county commissioners, and every polling place in Indiana County will be open. So if people aren't comfortable with the mail-in ballot process, you can go to the polls on primary day, which is coming up here in June. But I think it's so important that you vote, whether you do it by mail or you do it in person. It's important that everyone votes. But there are going to be some hiccups. I think this primary will be a good trial run for the mail-in balloting process, and this is new territory for all of them too, all the people that work for the elections board. So, bottom line is you got to get out and vote.
All right. Okay. State Representative Jim Struzzi, anything else we need people to know before we're done with you here this morning?
Well, I think just a quick reminder, Todd, to complete the census. We're still, I believe, close to 60% complete, and it's really challenging this time around because you can't have people out knocking on doors. So I continue to try and encourage people to complete the census. I think it's so important as we look at this, specifically this COVID crisis. Federal funding. If you don't complete the census, then we're not going to get the amount of federal funding that we're due in situations like this. So I think it's so important to remind people to do the census. And of course, remember that Memorial Day is coming up on Monday, and remember those who gave their lives for our freedom.
Absolutely. Representative Jim Struzzi, thanks for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
Appreciate that. It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS, AM 1160 and 101.1 FM and 101.1 FM.